They lived in the kind of yard people picture when they think of small-town quiet. A trailer, a camper out back, a swing set, trees pressing close. 2 children, Jack and Lily, vanished from that yard one morning, and the questions have never stopped piling up. Right now, before you read another paragraph, do the one thing that keeps this conversation alive in a public, useful way. Hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you get every verified update as investigators release it. This is one of those cases where public attention matters. Not for clicks, but because community tips and pressure can move a stalled investigation. Now, let's walk through what has been reported, alleged, and what remains unanswered, taking care to separate official findings from neighbor claims and online theories. What people online and some neighbors say about Daniel Martell is a portrait of 2 faces, one public, one private. On social media and in small circles, Martell presented himself as a hands-on stepfather, affectionate in photographs and friendly in short conversations. Neighbors called him the kind of guy who would help fix a truck, bring a package, or play with the kids in the yard. But accounts from those closest to the family, some of them anonymous or relayed through secondary sources, paint a very different picture behind closed doors. Intimidation, a quick temper, and strict control over the household. When allegations of this nature circulate, it's crucial to be clear, many of these claims have come from interviews, second-hand accounts, and public posts, and not all are substantiated in court documents. Still, the contrast between a curated public persona and the private reality alleged by some neighbors is a familiar pattern in many family harm cases, and it's one investigators routinely examine. People who live nearby have said they noticed signs that something was off in the home long before the children disappeared. Small observations: the kids turning away when a man raised his voice, doors kept shut tight, adults whispering at the edge of driveways, built a picture of a household where fear, not openness, was the norm. Bruises on a child's face or other marks are particularly jarring to neighbors and can trigger a range of reactions, from calls to authorities to private interventions. In the Sullivan case, photos that circulated of Jack and Lily showing marks on their faces have become a focal point for those who believe there was ongoing mistreatment. Again, redaction and privacy rules mean official files that could confirm the cause of those injuries have been withheld in parts. Family members and some spokespeople have disputed interpretations of the images. That tension between what people see and what documents say has made it hard even for neighbors to know when to act and how to interpret the signals they observed. When survivors and witnesses are asked why they didn't report earlier, the answers are rarely simple. Fear of retaliation, a desire to keep neighborhood peace, or simply not knowing whether an incident crossed a legal line can all play a role. There's also the heartbreaking reality that children exposed to chronic intimidation or physical control often learn to hide what's happening. They flinch, they go quiet, they laugh less at playtime because laughter attracts attention. Several neighbors who have spoken publicly noted that Jack would startle at sudden movements and that Lily's cheerful voice seemed quieter when Martell was nearby. Those behavioral cues are not proof of abuse on their own, but in the context of other observations they form a pattern that many find hard to ignore. Investigators use a methodical, evidence-based approach to sort patterns into facts. In this case, that meant polygraph tests for several people connected to the household, analysis of electronic records, and thorough search operations. Polygraph testing surfaced in public filings and media reports as a tool investigators use to rule people in or out of direct involvement. Several family members reportedly recorded results described as truthful. It's important to underscore that polygraphs are not definitive proof. They're an investigative tool that sometimes helps rule out certain lines of inquiry or narrow the field of witnesses to re-interview. They are not admissible as conclusive evidence in many courts and are interpreted cautiously. When a report says, polygraphs revealed only a few people truly knew what happened, that should be read carefully. What it often means is that polygraph results left investigators with fewer suspects to pursue aggressively, not that the polygraph provided a full answer. One of the more alarming threads in the accounts shared by neighbors involves repeated, deliberate burning on the property, burn pits allegedly used to incinerate household waste that included plastics, solvents, and other toxic materials. Neighbors described seeing thick black smoke and smelling acrid fumes on multiple occasions. Some reported the children coughing and complaining of headaches after those burns. In small communities, such observations spread quickly, and where there is a pattern of frequent burning, environmental and safety concerns arise alongside questions about whether burns could be used to destroy evidence. Again, it's crucial to be precise. Allegations about the contents of those pits, plastics, solvents, melted toys, need to be confirmed by forensic testing before they can be stated as fact in a news report. But for residents who saw black clouds rise repeatedly from the same yard and watched the children wander nearby, the concern was immediate and visceral. The idea that burn pits might have been used for evidence destruction is both chilling and speculative until validated. Investigators with forensics teams typically examine soil, ash, and nearby sediments for chemical residues, microfibers, and traces of burned objects. In some missing person cases, forensics have found minute particles that link a suspect to an item believed to be related to the missing person. So when neighbors report seeing masks on the adult conducting burns, protection for themselves but not for the children, it raises an instinctive alarm. Wearing protective gear while exposing children to smoke and fumes would be, at best, reckless. If forensic teams later find fibers or remnants consistent with burned clothing or child-related items, that would be a clear and actionable lead. At the present stage, the public record has suggested forensic teams collected soil and material samples for lab testing, but the results have either not yet been publicly released or have been redacted in court filings. What happens to children chronically exposed to toxic smoke? Medical professionals point to repeated, sometimes subtle signs: persistent coughing, sore throats, headaches, and in longer exposure, respiratory irritation or repeated infections. Younger children are particularly vulnerable. Their developing lungs and immune systems can be affected in ways adults may downplay. Reports that Lily and Jack experienced frequent coughing, or that they were sometimes seen rubbing their eyes or seeming drowsy after a burn, would be consistent with repeated exposure to particulates and fumes. Again, medical records would be the primary way to link symptoms conclusively to environmental exposure, and access to those records is controlled for privacy. Public commentary that connects observed symptoms to toxic burns should therefore be framed as a plausible concern rather than proven causation until medical and forensic confirmation is available. Across the community, those who did notice irregularities spoke of a complicated mix of trust and hesitancy toward authorities. Neighbors who might otherwise have reported a worrying scene said they hesitated, not always because they didn't want to help, but because they feared being drawn into family disputes or feared a retaliatory response. Small-town dynamics can protect abusers as much as they protect families. Loyalty, shame, and the desire to keep quiet for the sake of children can all be factors. In the Sullivan story, that hesitancy has become a painful element of the broader narrative. Some neighbors now say they wish they had spoken up earlier. Others say they did report concerns but felt their words did not prompt action. It's a hard part of every case like this. The community's own restraint and failure to act can become a tragic subplot. Forensic findings carry the weight of objectivity when they exist. In missing child investigations with possible environmental contamination or burns, forensic scientists look for trace materials: partially melted plastic with a known brand imprint, fibers from a child's garment, adhesive residue, or chemical signatures that match household cleaning agents or solvents. When reporting that forensic teams uncovered clothing fibers, a half-melted toy, and toxic soil, an ethical reporter must note whether those findings came from a lab-confirmed analysis included in an official release or if they were described in unverified neighborhood accounts. Where official documents show evidence collection, that is a direct lead investigators can follow. But when court filings redact the most sensitive details for investigative integrity, the public's only window is often through cautious summaries that avoid detail. If medical records indicate chronic symptoms consistent with chemical exposure, that could shift the case from a strictly missing person search to an inquiry with environmental and public health implications. In such a situation, public health officials may get involved alongside criminal investigators to assess ongoing risks to the community, conduct site remediation, and issue advisories if necessary. That has not been the publicly confirmed path here, at least not in any full detail, but the presence of environmental concerns combined with missing children always raises the stakes. What stands out in every credible analysis of this case so far is a pattern of small, corroborated facts. Missing boots, a seized pink blanket, a single boot impression on a pipeline trail, surveillance footage placing the family at a store the day before, mixed with community reports and redacted court filings that keep the most delicate evidence out of public view. That redaction is standard in active investigations. It protects the integrity of the case and the privacy of potential victims. But for the public, it is deeply unsatisfying and fuels speculation. When speculation fills gaps, it can target individuals unfairly. That is a risk in any viral story. Accusations can spread without verification and harm innocent people. There's a legal and moral frame here that can't be ignored. If authorities have sufficient evidence, they will act. The public pressure and the sheer number of tips often help move cold or stalled cases forward. If forensic testing ties burned remains to a child's clothing or toy, or if soil analysis matches a location that had previously been overlooked, those are the kinds of breakthroughs that lead to charges. But investigators must be measured. Acting on incomplete evidence risks jeopardizing a prosecution. That balance between acting on leads and preserving prosecutorial integrity is why these investigations can drag for months, and why community members sometimes feel frustrated when they want immediate accountability. Finally, there is the human toll. Families live with a daily ache and a public scrutiny that is crushing. Neighbors who did not act early are left with regret. Those who did act face social backlash. Investigators work under pressure and with the knowledge that every misstep can be fatal to a case. For missing children, time matters in particular ways. Memory fades, physical evidence degrades, and the social environment can shift. That is why public appeals asking for tips remain essential, not to fuel rumor, but to capture the small, precise observation that only one person might hold. In closing, a set of difficult truths sits on the table. First, the gap between public allegations and verified facts is wide in this case. Many serious claims about burns, toxic exposure, and hidden abusive behavior are being investigated, but not all are yet proven in court or through released forensic reports. Second, the behavioral signs neighbors described, flinching, withdrawn laughter, coughing after smoke, create a credible pattern that investigators are right to examine closely. Third, the balance between community pressure and investigational caution is delicate but necessary. Pressure can yield tips. Premature conclusions can derail justice. If you have anything at all that could help, the responsible action is straightforward. Contact the official tip lines and investigators handling the case. Don't share unverified accusations online. Instead, provide statements or potential evidence to investigators who can test it. Keep following reputable sources for verified updates and, if you're able, support local volunteer search efforts that operate under official coordination. We will continue to follow this case and report what's verified, with compassion for the missing children's family and care for the legal and ethical constraints that protect everyone involved. Please remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for the next update, not because this is a scoop chase, but because more verified information can lead to more informed public action. If you're watching and believe you have critical information, act now. Speak to the authorities. 2 children are missing, and whatever the theory you find most convincing, the path to finding the truth is through verified facts and persistent, careful work.